I'm Aaron Graber with Ventrac, and this video is all about how to operate the 45RC. The 45RC is our hybrid tractor platform that allows operators to drive the machine like normal or to step off the machine and remote control it from a distance. Now, you might notice that it looks very similar to a 4520, and because of that, we wanted to make a separate operational video highlighting the differences that the operator will see when running this machine. We do already have an operational overview for the standard 4520 tractor. There will be times that I call back to that video to reference things that are similar between the two platforms. For that reason, we're going to list that video in the link in the description below so that you can see that video and see all of the different stuff that these two platforms do share. Since this video is focused entirely on how to get the most out of this machine from an operational perspective, we're going to be really highlighting the controls and the user interface. Because of that, I've grabbed a brand new machine off the assembly line. We haven't even put decals on it because I want the focal point to be everything that the operator touches when they use this tractor. Most of the parts are either exactly the same or very similar to the 4520, and what that results in is a machine that acts very similar when the operator is driving the tractor on the seat. We made sure to do this because the 4520 platform is legendary for its capability, comfort, and ease of use, and we want to maintain that with this new tractor. You'll also notice that at the front of the machine, we have a tough cut mounted to this tractor. This is the standard tough cut that we already have in our line, and the reason we have it on this tractor is because it uses the same hitch arms and same connection points as the 4520. Moving back from the attachment, you'll see the hydraulics on this machine are slightly different than the current 4520. All 45RC units will come standard with dual auxiliary hydraulics, so you'll have these 4 hydraulic ports, but they are oriented in the old style, not with the additional cluster on the outside of the machine like the current 4520. It's also worth knowing that the third function kit is a possible kit to add to this machine, and because of the orientation inside the guts of the tractor, that install is a little bit easier than it was on the 4520. The dual wheels that you see on this tractor are exactly carryover from the 4520, so everything you know about those can be assumed on this tractor. Before I get started, I also want to say that we don't have time to go into the very fine detail on every single component of this machine, so make sure to read the operator's manual and check out all of the Ventrac literature to be sure on all of the very fine specs of everything we touch on today. The right side of the machine is as good a time as any to highlight the engine and the power plant for this machine. It is the Kubota gas EFI engine, and that's the same engine that is in our 4520N model. There's really not much more to highlight on the engine on the 45RC. You can basically expect what you would on a 4520N. The servicing of this unit is very similar, but again, be sure to read your operator's manual and make sure you know any differences between this and the standard tractors. Continuing on the right side of the machine, I want to highlight this cover down here. This obviously looks very different from a 4520, and it's a little bit different shape. That is because there is a whole host of new hydraulic components underneath that cover that enable this machine to receive those electronic inputs that it gets from the new electronic joystick. We'll get to the joystick here in a second. I'm going to breeze past that and talk about the operator panel here. This has your PTO switch in the same place as the 4520, and it also has a new location for the park brake. The park brake is now a push button. It is engaged when a button is down and disengaged, ready to drive when you pull the button up. The rest of this panel is very similar to 4520, and it houses different switches for various lights and 12-volt functions. The last thing that I want to highlight on the right side of this tractor is this handy little mount that we have on the ROPS for the optional remote harness. We're launching another remote overview video to go deep into that setup, and it talks about this harness and the standard harness that comes with it, but this is really the best one that we offer, so we wanted to give a really convenient way to carry it on the tractor with you. One thing that you'll find if you don't have these mounts is that when you go out to work out in the field, if you plan on driving the tractor and then remote controlling the tractor, having this harness on your lap or in your hands isn't really workable, so you need a place to store it. It simply bolts to this mount, and all you have to do is unthread the screw, open up the clasp, and then pull it off and use it. That wraps up the right side of the tractor. What I'm going to do now is move the machine around because everything else that we're going to talk about you can see from the back left corner of the machine, and we'll finish going through all of the different controls from that perspective. Standing at the back of the 45RC, there's not much to talk about behind the machine other than one thing. The 45RC is not compatible with a 3-point hitch kit that the 4520 is, so this unit does not run 3-point accessories. Past that, there is one obvious addition to this tractor, and that is the remote control sitting right here. This is in a mounting box that we have mounted to the ROPS, similar to the other harness mount. And if I take these clasps out, it will show you the remote control that runs this machine. Every 45RC comes standard with this remote control and all of the hardware up here on the ROPS to be able to connect to and run the tractor. I'm only going to touch briefly on this remote control because we have a separate video. The link is in the description where you can go see the how-to video about everything you need to know to operate this piece. The rough basics of it are, once you connect to the machine with the e-stop, this becomes your steering control and your auxiliary control, and this becomes your machine drive and attachment control. It's laid out kind of like the tractor is. So this is your steering wheel and this is your unit drive control. Up on the top of the ROPS, we have all of the hardware that's used for the tractor to connect to and communicate with the remote. Right here you see various sensors that let the remote connect to the machine. This is a flashing LED that lets you know when the machine is connected. And then right under here is your camera. This view is displayed on the screen of the remote control when you toggle with the dial, and you can adjust it on the tractor because it's magnetic. So you can put it on this flat surface, twist it to the angle that you'd like, and then there's even more adjustment in the camera itself. I'm in the operator station now of the 45RC, and this is where everything is different compared to the 4520. The 45RC is an electro-hydraulic machine, which means it has electronic inputs for drive control and for steering, rather than the purely mechanical hydraulic connections of the 4520. The first place that is noticeable is here at the steering wheel. If you're familiar with the 4520, you know that you can grab that steering wheel and twist it a little bit, but it is very hard because there's a lot of resistance. That's because you're trying to force hydraulic oil to flow when the machine is off. Here, the machine will let the steering wheel spin freely because since it's electronic, there's nothing there to be resistance until the machine is actually running. That same electronic control happens over here at the joystick to control the machine's movements forward, reverse, and attachment movements. The steering wheel doesn't require much explanation because it operates just like a current tractor of today. The feel is slightly different, but it does mimic the hydraulic feel very well. Speaking of electro over hydraulic, let's dive into the joystick itself because this is the heartbeat of controlling the machine. The first thing I want to explain about the joystick is how it's mounted. You can see it's mounted on a few spherical joints here, and then it also reaches back into an armrest area that's fully adjustable. I've got everything somewhat pre-loosened so that it's a little bit easier to show how you make those adjustments, and then once I get it to where I would run it as an operator, I'll lock it down and explain the movements of this piece. So the joystick mount itself has a long range of travel forward and reverse. This lets operators with longer or shorter arms find a comfortable spot. In order to get it out of the way, to have access to this area, you can flip it up and behind. And then you can see these joints on the mount allow everything to get closer to the operator or up and down from the operator. These joints here allow the end of the joystick to get tipped forward, tilted in, tilted out. It goes to a pretty lengthy extreme in most of these directions, probably nowhere near where some operators would run. I tend to like somewhat of a neutral position with the joystick tipped back ever so slightly. That's what's comfortable for me. But the point is, no matter who you are and what your body size and type and shape, you can find a place for this to sit that is very comfortable to run. You'll notice that when you grab a hold of the joystick, there's a notch right in the center of its travel, and that is the neutral position. When you push past that notch, you are now in the forward position, and then back behind it, you're in reverse. If you do this though, without depressing the trigger, the machine won't actually go into reverse. So you have to start from the neutral position, make sure the trigger is depressed, and then pull back and you'll enter reverse. If you're moving in reverse and you let go of the trigger, the machine will come to a stop and you have to come back to neutral, pull the trigger again, and go back into reverse. Whether you're in the neutral position or in a direction of travel, if you take the joystick and move it to the left, that will raise the attachment, similar to today. If you move it to the right, that will lower the attachment, and if you stay moving to the right, it will put down pressure on the attachment. The big difference here is that there is no detent all the way to the right like there is on the SDLA lever. In order to go into float on this unit, you simply press the green button. It actually works really slick. It's a super convenient way to get back into float when you're making a maneuver, doing a Y turn, picking up the deck to drive over something that you don't want to cut. Going back into float very easily with this button is a seamless and quick operation. So that goes into float. If you want to take it out of float, you can either hit the button to take it out, or you can just raise the attachment and it'll naturally bring it out afloat. On the screen, there will be an icon, so if you hit that button and send the attachment into float, it pops up on the screen so that you know that's the condition you're in. The three colored buttons to the right of that, the yellow, orange, and red, are the 12-volt buttons that correspond with the 4520 SDLA 12-volt buttons of today. Your yellow and orange make movements on electronic actuators, and then your red button is the on-off 12-volt. Where your thumb rests is the auxiliary control. Up and down is auxiliary 1, left and right is auxiliary 2. And then below that, we have a very cool feature that we call VRIM. These two black buttons select a mode on the screen somewhere between 1 and 7 out of 7. So when I start the tractor, it'll be in 7 out of 7, and if I move these black buttons, if I dial all the way back, let's say 1 out of 7, then what that means is I can go full stick and I will be achieving 1/7 of the total speed that is possible with this machine in whatever gear I'm in. If I then hit the black button on the opposite side and I trim all the way up to 7 out of 7, I'm achieving 100% of the forward travel that I can receive from the machine in this gear range. This is a very cool feature because it allows me to control the wheel speed of my machine in a very consistent way, separate from the speed of the deck or whatever attachment I happen to be using. The short explanation of VRIM is that it allows the operator to move this stick all the way forward and still isolate tractor speed and tractor RPM. That lets the operator set the RPM based on what they want the attachment to be doing, and then run the joystick at full stick and select the speed via the VRIM so that they have a consistent operation the whole time. In practice, here's what that looks like with a tough cut like I have on the machine right now. I would run full RPM on this tractor, and I would go out and I would cut into an area and realize that my optimal speed is, let's say, 3.5 miles an hour. And rather than try and meter my speed out continuously, I would run full stick and then select the trim level that allows the tractor to maintain that speed or as close to it as possible without me having to make any additional operator inputs. The benefits here are consistency, efficiency, and a lot less operator fatigue. The other point of mention on the auxiliaries for this tractor is that compared to the 4520, the 45RC has auxiliary circuits that have about double the hydraulic flow. Now, that still doesn't make them good enough to run continuous flow in any applications, but it is very nice for the performance upgrade on some attachments. We also have another unique feature on the 45RC that works somewhat in conjunction with the joystick and VRIM to make the tractor a little bit more efficient and easier to operate. That's a perfect segue into talking about the dash panel of this tractor, because that switch is this lower left switch here that electronically and automatically governs the drive function of the 45RC. The best way to explain this is, again, back to an example of operation. When you're using a tough cut deck and you're cutting heavy brush going up a hill, it is possible to get the machine to bog down if you overload the deck. This keeps you from doing that by automatically metering the speed of the tractor and sensing when that engine is overloaded to keep you from overwhelming the hydraulic system of the unit. That feature is very, very cool, and it's an awesome addition to this tractor to make it even more capable. We did make it selectable because there are conditions where the operator themselves may choose to be in total control, but this makes the operator in most conditions more efficient and easier to run a higher overall travel speed without risking stalling the engine. Just above that switch on the dash is our RPM switch, and this is pretty simple. When you start the machine up, this adjusts your RPM up and down. It adjusts it up and down in equal increments, and then if you hold it up, it'll throttle all the way to full throttle pretty quickly, and then same thing, if you hold it down, it'll throttle back down to idle. The final switch on the left side that I want to highlight is the remote control switch itself. It's over here on the left side of the panel, and when the position is down, that is operator on mode. The tractor acts just like a normal tractor when this switch is down, and then as soon as I flip it up, I've got my screen on to see, I'll get the icon that lets me know that this is in remote control mode now, and I don't have the ability to start up and use this machine from the seat. If I try, nothing will happen. It won't let me even do it. And if I try to connect to the machine with the remote control, with this in the operator down position, I'll get an error screen on the remote control itself. So if you're having problems getting the machine to start or connect with the remote control, that's one simple place to look to make sure this is in the right place. Over on the right side of the steering wheel, this tractor has one switch that's controlling anything. There is a space for a second switch, and that's for the optional loader hydraulics. When you have that kit installed, you would use that switch to switch between the main tractor hitch arms and the loader lift arms. The one switch that this tractor does have controls the auxiliary 1 and 2 float functions. This switch is one part functionality and one part prevention. It's a rocker switch and it can be moved up and down. Up is for auxiliary 1, down is for auxiliary 2. One press puts that auxiliary function in float. A second press in that same direction pulls that auxiliary out of float. The functionality part of that switch is simply to control attachments. If you have anything with an auxiliary that you want to run in float, that switch will let you do it. The prevention part of that switch is to relieve pressure from attachments before you shut the machine off. On a normal tractor, you would turn the key off and you would move your secondary auxiliary lever back and forth to relieve the pressure on those hydraulics. But since we have electronic inputs here, the system operates a little bit differently. With this machine, you'll want to leave the machine running, and while it's running, you'll want to put both auxiliaries in float to allow all of that pressure to release from those auxiliary lines. That way, if you switch attachments, you're not building up pressure in those lines, and then you'll have difficulty connecting later. The last unique piece of the 45RC that I want to highlight is the new digital display. In order to see it, I simply turn the key on, it'll power up to the Ventrac logo, and then after a few moments, it'll show me various settings and diagnostics. This is the home screen for the digital display. You can see my RPM, I'm obviously at 0 because I'm not running right now. This will be the slope gauge, and this is built into all of these digital displays. It remains inside the display. It's not a separate kit like it is on a current tractor. I've got my miles per hour. Just below that, that's my VRIM. So right now that is actually active, even though the machine's not running. I can change that down. Now I'm at 1 out of 7. Every button press takes me to a new level. Then I've got battery vitals, hours on the machine. Right there you can see that my park brake is set. A lot of the stuff that goes into this blue box will not display until the machine is running. As an example, that's where your float icon will be, and you can't achieve seeing that until the machine is running and it actually senses that the hitch arms are indeed in float. Underneath all of my vital information, there's a row of warning lights that show up when I make various movements. You'll see if I move the joystick out of neutral, it'll show me that I'm doing that. If I turn the PTO on, that'll indicate as well. And as soon as I have the PTO on, it's not going to let me start the machine. But then if I turn that PTO off and I'm back in neutral, I can start just fine. Another nice feature of the digital display is that it's touchscreen, so I can access all of the windows. If I go into the menu option here, I have a few different options that pop out. I can go into setup, let's say, as an example, and I'm in the US, so I'm going to keep it in standard, but if I was in another place, I can put it into metric units. I can change the clock and brightness of the screen. If I go back to home, pull out my call out again, I go to faults or diagnostics. Those are useful places as well. If I go into diagnostics, I'll see a history of things that the machine is recognizing about itself. And same thing with faults. If I go into that screen, I don't have anything showing up because this machine is brand new. But if I experience a fault code, it's going to log that in this screen and I'll be able to see what that is without plugging into the display. The display is capable of being updated, and the process to do that would be to plug in a USB from the side. You go to this ECU update screen, and that shows you directions on how to do that. In order to get back to the main screen, I simply press the home button, and now I'm back to the tractor diagnostics and I'm ready to run. One other point of mention on the left side of the tractor is the high-low range selector. That is the same as a 4520, even though the drive control of the 45RC is different. You can select high and low range physically on the side of the machine, and when you're in remote control, you have to be in low range to operate. I talked a little bit about the location of the park brake before, but now that I'm here in the operator station, I want to show this is where it's actually located. So while you're driving, this will be up, and if you have an event that you need to get to the park brake, you simply reach over and press it down. Functionally speaking, it does the same job as the park brake on our standard hydraulic tractors, but it is an electronic park brake on this machine, so it works a little bit different at its core. Since it's electronic, it does require power to release for safety reasons. So this machine is not towable if it has a totally dead battery. You'll notice that you'll put this tractor into neutral and you'll release the park brake, and then it tows just the same as a standard 4520. But if you have a completely dead battery, it won't actually have the power to release that park brake, so you have to put a charger on it to be able to get the machine to tow. Thank you for watching this operational overview of the Ventrac 45RC tractor. We are very excited about this machine because it adds a lot of cool features and functionality. If you have any further questions about the 45RC or need help with diagnostics on a product that you own, please be sure to reach out to your dealer, check out the user manual, or call us and email us directly here at Ventrac. You can see more information at ventrac.com, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos of this product in action. Thanks for watching.